The religious right is a powerful voting bloc in this country, shaping elections, legislation, and Supreme Court nominees. But what the religious right says about its most famous rallying cry, abortion, well, it often isn't true. That the Bible forbids abortion, that's a lie. That abortion is murder, that legal abortions are dangerous, nope, none of that's true. This movement, in fact, is so full of misinformation that its very origin is also a lie. Back in the 1970s, evangelical Christians were largely apolitical, and religious conservative political activists like Paul Weyrich wanted to change that. Dartmouth historian Randall Balmer, in his oft-cited piece for Politico, wrote, "The hypothetical moral majority needed a catalyst and a standard around which to rally. The galvanizing issue was not abortion. It was, in fact, an organized fight to protect Christian schools from racial integration." Religious leaders blamed President Jimmy Carter for IRS actions at the time that removed tax breaks previously enjoyed by private schools that failed to integrate, and a movement was brewing. But as Balmer notes, defending school segregation wasn't the best look, so evangelical leaders searched for a more palatable rallying cry, which would become abortion. Joining me now is Frank Schaeffer, director and author of several books, including Why I Am an Atheist Who Believes in God. Frank, it's great to see you again. Unfortunately, whenever I call upon you, it's for dark and difficult reasons. But I guess for people who don't know who Paul Weyrich is and aren't familiar with him, let me just play him real quick. This is a very short soundbite. Let's let him be heard.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people.
And I'm the one who only says Weyrich, but it's Weyrich. But tell us about him. Who was this guy?
Well, you know, it's interesting you mentioned Professor Randall Balmer from Dartmouth. I just interviewed him on my podcast last week in conversation with Frank Schaeffer, and Randy and I talked for over an hour about part my family played back in the 70s and 80s. My evangelist father, Francis Schaeffer, and I went all around the country, including, by the way, our biggest stadium appearance in Dallas, Texas, where we helped found the evangelical wing of the pro-life movement that's so much in the news now. Who Paul Weyrich was a Roman Catholic activist who tried to involve evangelicals in building a right-wing coalition based on racism. He wanted to cash in on the hatred that many white evangelicals had for the US government because it was questioning the tax-exempt status of all white academies that were a reaction to integration. And then they turned to the abortion issue as another piece of red meat with which to enrage their followers. Now, when we went out to pitch the quote-unquote pro-life movement, which in fact was fake family values, thinly veiled misogyny, keep women in their place movement, that's what it was. It wasn't about abortion. Weyrich and others decided that they could take that energy and bring new voters to the Republican Party. Here's a point most people don't understand, Joy. When we went out, the Reverend Billy Graham, the evangelist, and Dr. Criswell, who at that time was president of the Southern Baptist Convention, pastor of First Baptist in Dallas, and president of Dallas Theological Seminary. You don't get any more conservative evangelical than that. He was pro-choice, not ambivalent, but pro-choice. Our first job as right-wing activists, and I was my dad's nepotistic sidekick, and I had spent the rest of my life repenting from the fact that I did so much harm to so many people by helping to energize this anti-woman movement. It was not anti-abortion, anti-woman movement. When we went out, evangelicals were the people who wanted no part of this, and we had to talk them into this crusade. And now, fast forward 40 years, and we have a situation in Texas right now tonight where the American Taliban, because that's what it is, there's not an American evangelical right-wing movement, there is an American Taliban, is weirdly similar in so many ways to the Middle Eastern Islamist terrorists. And here's another weird one. You know, a few years ago, some of the Islamist terrorist activists in Pakistan and other countries were murdering vaccine doctors and nurses who were coming in to try to vaccinate against polio, with some mythological conspiracy theories about how this was part of the US government plot. Think about this tonight, Joy. The evangelical voter in Texas, who backed Donald Trump, is now also the voter who is calling vaccines some sort of government conspiracy and wanting to stop Joe Biden's program to deliver our country from the COVID virus. There's a weird convergence of factors here, whether it's Handmaid's Tale and taking away women's rights, or whether it's the anti-vaccine movement that has grown out of this weird fascination with conspiracy theories and misinformation. Wherever you touch it, the evangelical movement is no longer the one that my dad and I tried to talk into radicalism, and sadly were too successful in doing back in the 70s. Today, and I want to say this again, there is no evangelical political movement. There is a new American Taliban, and their goal is theocracy, which means to take our religious beliefs, which for them are Old Testament law, not Christianity, and force secular Americans, non-evangelical Americans, progressive Americans, women, people of color into that box. And this is not hyperbole. This is happening right now tonight in Texas. This is happening right now with the people dying of COVID, children dying of COVID, because pro-lifers have seen fit to stand against Joe Biden's vaccine as a way to own the lids. And their price is to be literally bioterrorists. That's where we are tonight, Joy. It's not back where I was in the 1970s trying to talk Billy Graham. I was with him at Mayo Clinic when we had that conversation, or Dr. Criswell into taking a stand. So Dr. Balmer, from when he talks about this right-wing movement to sort of fuse the anger of anti-integration with the beginnings of this thing called the anti-abortion movement, is totally correct.
Wow, it's frightening. And I'm just going to put this up before we go. I'm just going to show this photo once again. We've showed it on the show before. Remember, the anti-mask, sort of wing of the far right that you're seeing now, they were pro-mask at a time when it wasn't even necessary, because AIDS had nothing to do with airborne viruses. But they were like, put your kid in a mask. Let's just remember who we're dealing with. Frank Schaeffer, I have to bring you back on. We got to talk more about this, because this is a terrifying subject, but important for folks to know. Frank Schaeffer, thank you very much, sir.